It is definitely sexual harassment any way you slice it.
A number of people to say, because I wouldn't have sex with another guy in the game, I couldn't get promoted.
I wouldn't sleep with the vice president of operations, so they fired me.
You saw ring boys, did you, being sexually harassed?
Yes, I've seen ring boys being harassed.
Some of these allegations are absolutely absurd that have been raised.
McMahon insists it's all just a conspiracy to wreck his business.
A casting couch, essentially, alleged in the wrestling game, and some guys are saying, I lost my job because I wouldn't do this to this guy who was a higher, more powerful than me on the ladder. And before you think this is trivial, first of all, let's understand that a couple of these charges involve kids, 14 years old, juveniles. You go to jail for a long time if you're involved with of any kind with a juvenile. One more point. The Wrestling Federation, you know how you tee-hee, ha-ha, what a joke, hoo-hoo, $1.7 billion.
Think that Slaughter can do anything right now to him.
It's a circus thinly disguised as a sport.
I'm cool. I'm the Intercontinental Champion.
But accusations of sordid seduction, sexual harassment, have the big top pulling down on the ringleaders of the World Wrestling Federation.
This is not family entertainment.
It sure isn't. Not amidst charges that ring boys, referees, even the wrestlers themselves had to perform favors to get and keep their job.
Professional wrestling has always existed in the space between sport and spectacle. For decades, the WWF, now known worldwide as WWE, was marketed as family entertainment, filled with larger-than-life heroes, villains, and colorful characters. But behind the curtain, there is another story, blurred by championship belts and pyrotechnics, of young boys given the opportunity to build the stage of dreams, who say they were met instead with nightmares. This is the story of the Ring Boys scandal, a story that the wrestling industry hoped the world would forget.
You know, from Gorgeous George back in the 1950s to Hulk Hogan in the 1990s, tens of millions of people have had their imagination stimulated by the pseudo-sport of wrestling. But no one could have imagined what we've uncovered. Really, it's the dirty underside to this outwardly fun and flamboyant sport. As our quick report, these alarming allegations of a sensational scandal come just when wrestling has become wildly popular.
In the 1980s, WWF employed a group of teenage boys, some as young as 12, to travel show to show and help set up rings, carry gear, and run errands. To them, it was a dream job, free entry to live events, brushes with wrestling superstars, and a taste of the life they hoped to one day join. The work was grueling but coveted. One of these boys was Tom Cole, who joined WWF's crew at just 13. For him, and others like him, the company was a golden ticket, until the dream began to unravel.
You know, and I was trying to be accepted into the business. Yeah. I was young, I was green.
And you got the big dream ahead of you. Maybe you're going to be the big guy. And there was money if you got on the main card.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're following your dream, and I suppose you want us to know, among other things, that when a couple of guys in the game, executive types, come on to you like that, and you're 19 years old, you may be a little hesitant to tee them off.
Of course. And so I endured it for as long as I could until it became, I started feeling suffocated or, and I couldn't take it anymore.
Orton implicates two top executives, the former vice president of operations, Pat Patterson, and his former assistant, Terry Garvin, as well as ring announcer Mel Phillips. He told us that Garvin came on to him.
About 40 miles out of Amarillo, heading west on Interstate 40, he started proposing that I allow him to perform a certain sexual task on me while I was driving. And, I said, no, I'm not that way.
What is your knowledge of the upper management of WWF using their power for sexual favors?
If they saw an opportunity, they would grab it. With the ring assistants, the ring boys, I can remember in Chicago, one of the ring assistants who was rather young came up to me and asked me about Terry Garvin and that he was kind of being harassed and asked for my advice on what he should do.
One WWF official, Mel Phillips, a ring announcer and crew chief, developed what court filings would later describe as a peculiar and unnatural interest in the ring boys.
For one fall, introducing first from Seattle, Washington, weighing in at 220 pounds, Brady Boone. His opponent, soon to be making his way to the ring area, hails from Montreal, Canada, weighing in at 250 pounds.
Survivors alleged that Phillips invited them to his hotel rooms, engaged in inappropriate physical contact, and made them feel trapped between silence and the loss of their dream jobs.
22-year-old Tom Cole was hired as a ring boy for the World Wrestling Federation when he was 13 years old. For the next 3 years, he says he was sexually abused by his supervisor, Mel Phillips, who Cole says has a foot fetish. And Cole says there were other abusers besides Phillips.
I was grabbed on numerous occasions in my testicles, on my buttocks by Pat Patterson of the World Wrestling Federation, and Terry Garvin propositioned me when I was 16, offered me cocaine and all kinds of drugs to have them. When I refused, I was let go from the company when I was 16, and then I returned again when I was 19. I was let go again because I refused Terry Garvin's advances.
So Cole hired a lawyer and ended up with a $55,000 settlement to cover lost wages. As for Mel Phillips, he was fired from the company. But Cole's family says firing Phillips wasn't enough, and they were at the Stamford headquarters today demanding justice.
I would like to see Mel Phillips put behind bars where the hell he belongs. Because he's a child than me, and he can it's enough for him just to step down from his job. He's walking the streets as children. The man should be put in jail.
Other officials were also named, including Terry Garvin, a senior backstage figure, was accused of propositioning crew members for inappropriate favors in exchange for continued employment, and Pat Patterson, a trusted executive in Vince McMahon's inner circle, who also faced allegations. The one accuser later withdrew his claims, and Patterson was reinstated.
What are we getting first?
Ground beef and ground pork.
Ground beef.
That's 4 pounds of ground beef. And give me 4 pounds of ground pork. You like to play with meat, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot, brother.
Well, I have a lot to do.
Thanks, buddy.
Enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, after I'm a former pro wrestler, I got out of the business about 4 years ago. But back in 1985 in Los Angeles, California, at the University Hilton Hotel, after the WWF had run a card at the sports arena, I was sitting at a bar with, I guess, can I name these people? Sure. With Pat Patterson, Andre the Giant, Dr. Jerry Graham, and Mike LaBelle. He was a Los Angeles promoter at the time, or a former promoter in Los Angeles.
Right.
And we sat there drinking maybe for an hour or so. I was talking to Pat. I'd known Pat for maybe 6 months. I knew he was gay, but, it didn't matter to me if he was gay or not. And I knew he was actually kind of running the shows in L.A. at the time. I don't believe he's in position as the booker yet. And I asked him...
Let me interrupt to say that he is one of the executives who has resigned.
Right.
Very good, sir.
And I asked him what's the chance of using me to do jobs, which means I was a loser. I'm not real big. I never made a lot of money in the business. I didn't really expect to go in the WWF, make a lot of money. But
you wanted to be in the game.
Yeah, I loved the business. I worked for $10 a night sometimes in Tennessee, just to wrestle, just to be in the business. Right. At the time, in '85, I was wrestling in Hawaii and Mexico and Southern California. So I asked Pat for, if you give me a shot or at least a tryout. He said, well, you got 2 chances, slim and none. He goes, well, there is one way. And he wanted me to come up to the room with him and have world with him. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, I'm not interested. And after that, I went to the next show they had at the sports arena. Went down to the dressing room where they'd always let me, I was in the dressing room, friends with a lot of the other wrestlers there. And Pat had me physically thrown out after that, acted like he didn't know me.
For the boys, the message was chilling. Stay silent and complicit, or risk losing everything.
Former WWF referee Mike Clark says Garvin also approached him in a hotel room.
He said, if you want to come to the television tapings, I'll bring you to the next television tapings, and I'll book you across every event in Canada. And I said, geez, that would be great.
Clark turned Garvin down, but he says there were other approaches.
They said to me that you needed a green card to come to the United States to work. And the only way that was feasible was if you became a member of what they call the cream team.
Cream team? What is that supposed to mean?
Well, this is what they call the ring crew, the people who set up the rings and the referees throughout the United States that are doing favors for certain bosses in the World Wrestling Federation. The bosses on top of this cream team business were Terry Garvin and Pat Patterson.
Clark also named Mel Phillips, calling him the sickest of the three.
One story in Allentown was that when you mentioned this Mel Phillips, I was told that when he was caught with a young boy in a car, they talked to this young boy and said, why? Why are you allowing this? And he says, well, I get to go to all the TV tapings here in Allentown or Hamburg, or both, for free. I get to meet a lot of the wrestlers they introduced me to and even take pictures with a lot of them. You know.
It has gone to the mat with controversy and survived. Wrestling fans have been willing to overlook fake decisions in the ring and allegations over drug use and steroid abuse. But now there's a scandal about what goes on in the locker room. With stars like Hulk Hogan, the World Wrestling Federation produces entertainment it says is suitable for kids. But with this morning's headlines and charges made by wrestlers of harassment, the WWF finds itself caught up in another adult scandal. Barry Orton, in the multicolored type, wrestled in the WWF under the name Barry O.
Good move there by Barry O.
He says some male promoters in the WWF prey on young, good-looking wrestlers.
You see it go on all the time, coming out of the shower, and there's your booker standing there staring at your midsection with that goofy look on his face, making groans and licking his lips.
Billy Jack Haynes wrestled with the WWF for 2 years.
What a match of muscle right here, Gorilla. Look at the builds on you two guys.
He says harassment of wrestlers is widespread.
Put it this way, if you dropped your soap in the shower, you look both ways, ahead and behind you, before you picked it up.
Orton says he's seen wrestlers climb to the top by giving in to advances.
These promoters, too, they prey on the dreams of young men. You know, that dream of becoming a top star, making good money, and you know, it's a dream that I had for many years, and they prey on that to manipulate you and blackmail you mentally and emotionally into destroying yourself.
This is the second public crisis for the WWF in less than a year. Last July, owner Vince McMahon announced a drug screening program in an effort to put down widespread reports of steroid use. At World Wrestling Federation headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut this morning, McMahon acknowledged that 2 wrestling executives have resigned amid the charges. But he says none of those charges are in fact true.
We have been undergoing an investigation. Our investigation shows us that, again, if anything, there could very well have been some locker room horseplay. There was never anything, to our knowledge, that approached anything illegal or immoral. We don't tolerate that here in the World Wrestling Federation.
The story might never have reached the public without one journalist, Phil Mushnick, of the New York Post. In February 1992, Mushnick began publishing columns that exposed these allegations, including one from Tom Cole, then 21, who claimed years of abuse and harassment.
World Wrestling Federation President Linda McMahon says an outside investigator concluded there was no evidence of Phillips molesting employees, but the company fired him anyway.
At first he was put on suspension pending investigation, and the investigation was taking so long, there was so much negative happening with it that we finally told Mel that it was better for him and better for our company for him to go on in a different way.
McMahon doesn't deny Phillips had a foot fetish, but she said it had become a joke and was blown out of proportion.
If you call a man filming your feet for hours at a time and playing with your feet and making you cry when you're only 13 years old and recording it for his own purposes, if she calls that normal, then obviously there's something wrong with her also.
McMahon says she took a personal interest in Cole and tried to send him to counseling, encouraged him to get his high school equivalency, and finally offered to put him through Westchester Community College with a promise to come back and work for the company if he passed all his courses. She says she was greatly disappointed when he did none of the above.
We took an opportunity to help a young man who, for whatever reason, seemed confused, he seemed troubled, and wanted to have an opportunity in life, and we felt that we could help him.
Cole says McMahon's efforts were not out of personal interest, but for personal gain. That's an issue the courts will have to decide.
The coverage shook the WWF. This was an era before social media, before the Me Too movement, and wrestling was still seen as a niche subculture. For many fans, it was easy to dismiss.
Now I want to hear from you. Go.
Okay, first thing.
You got a real diamond?
Yes, it's real. I don't wear nothing fake. Nothing's about the doctor's fake. Get that straight. Right here, right up front. I'm not fake.
Go ahead, pal. Tell me what you're going to tell me.
My diamonds are not fake.
Tell me what you're going to tell me.
Hey, this guy here, Wilson. First thing, I never heard of you, never heard your name before you went on some news show and come out saying that wrestling's fake and all this and that somebody wanted to make love to you or some man or something. Well, see, I've never had that problem. You say it goes on everywhere. I've never had that problem with a man. Man never come up and ask me nothing because I had plenty of women. Now, I've been in wrestling 15 years. No promoter ever made love to me or tried to make love to me or asked me for favors. I think you're a liar. I think you're a liar and you want publicity. That's all you want. I don't think you can play football. I don't think you can wrestle. I don't even think you should be out here. I think you're just somebody that wanting to come up here and say, I'm a professional wrestler. There's 1,000 people out here, 100,000 people who want to get in the limelight. And you say you come out and say, first thing I want to know, what gives you the right to even be out here? Have you ever beat anybody? Have you ever?
Go ahead, answer.
I don't even know.
Answer, man.
Well, number one, because of my sexual persuasion, and the fact that I didn't want to participate.
He's been in the business 15 years and that never happened to him. How come it happened to you?
Hey, maybe he didn't like him.
And he's not any prettier than you are. Huh?
I guess the promoter didn't like him that way.
Did he like you?
He must have.
Did you kiss him?
Did you ever wrestle? Did you ever wrestle?
Did I what?
Did you wrestle, Jim?
Of course I wrestled.
Did you win anything?
I've wrestled and I've been in the business since 1968.
How many matches have you had?
Couple thousand.
Couple thousand? Dr. D, sounds like...
never heard of him.
You never heard of him?
Never heard of him. Boy, he went on the news show running his mouth.
I wrestled under my own name.
All right, let me ask you then. Anyone who watches wrestling knows that with, two big guys colliding in the ring, they can hurt each other. But you say that a promoter forced you to hurt yourself in the ring with a blade job. Now, what is a blade job?
Well, it's not a matter...
I'm glad it said blade because after your first thing, I was, kind of a job it was.
I was told that when I was in Australia, I was overseas, and because I wouldn't go to bed with this guy.
Again? Another guy?
No, that was the first time.
Okay.
The first and only time. He told his booker to make me
What'd you
start
say,
losing
hooker?
matches.
Did he say hooker?
And
did he say hooker?
I think he said booker, Doc.
Okay, I didn't.
Do you know what a booker is?
What do I know what a booker is?
Do you know what a booker is?
I know what a booker is. I know what a fool is. I know what a liar is and a goof. And you're a liar and a goof. I don't think you can wrestle. You never.
Jim, I still don't know what the blade job is. Tell me what that is.
A blade job is where they want you to bleed.
So you're in the fight,
and I told him I wouldn't do it, and he said, "You're not."
What are you supposed to do? Cut yourself with a blade?
Right, exactly, to produce the blood. And because
you carry a little capsule and break it if you want.
No, that I don't know whether that ever happened or not in the business, but the way they do it now is with a blade.
I think you're a liar on that too. I've never used what you call a blade or anything else, and I can make you bleed in less than 2 seconds. I'll hit you so hard.
And people wonder why victims hardly ever speak out, especially among men.
It's not just exclusive for the women either in wrestling, right? I mean,
no, it's that way. Yeah, it's that way for the guys too. Except for I'm lucky because I had an uncle who had a fierce reputation, who they thought I was like him. I'm gonna cut you in half and all that shit, which isn't true, but people thought that. Yeah. But the women are very mistreated, but so are the guys. But you don't hear about it as much, because it's so common. Back in the day, before I was there, WWE was a playground for pet. They only hired ring crew guys who were under 18. They wouldn't hire anybody over 18 because they were pet. Mel Phillips and Pat Patterson. I'm not afraid to say those two names are perverts.
Well, didn't Mel Phillips have to get edited out of like WrestleMania 3 and a bunch of other stuff?
Yeah.
What was he doing? He'd have kids in a bunch of different towns or something?
He had kids in every town, but he was a foot guy where like they'd step on him while he jacked off and stuff, or vice versa, and some sick shit. And And he didn't deny it. He just faded away. Fucking gross. Terry Funk beat him up one time because he put his hat on. He like took Terry Funk's hat and put it on. Terry Funk beat his ass. Mike Spada, brother, does the ring crew for WWE. F. Not anymore, I don't think. He's back. From what I heard.
Really?
Yeah. He only hired young kids, young boys, not kids, boys. They have to be a boy.
That'd be interesting getting into wrestling and saying, I'll get you in, and then...
Yeah, and they get him in. They get him in the dressing room. They get him setting the ring up and get him in a Coke and a popcorn and a dick. But Mel Phillips had somebody in every town. That's why he was so notorious.
And then Pat Patterson, he left and then was brought back, right?
Yeah, but he had his boyfriends with him. He had one guy that looked like Spike Dudley who died a little while ago. They had another guy who was a bodybuilder. His name was Sylvester something. Anyways, he worked for WWE at the time. That was his boyfriend at the time also. He had him right there with him. Yeah, I think a lot of it's exaggerated, but some of that does go on, Vince is a fruitcake himself. And he hires fruitcakes, I didn't witness for myself, but that's what I hear. That's why Pat Patterson still has a job, or had a job, until he died. He worked there regardless of the heat he had or not. He had so much on Vince couldn't fire him.
We were overseas one time, and there were a group of young little boys sitting out from the hotel, and I asked him, I think I asked the warlord, what are these kids doing out here? He goes, the black ring announcer, what was his name?
Mel Phillips.
Mel Phillips. It was fine. It said Mel's getting these kids tickets tonight, and for return, he takes them to the room and plays with their feet. I go, what? So it's like, and I can tell you a million stories like that.
But Mushnick kept digging. He alleged a pattern. The WWF officials knew about Mel Phillips' behavior for years, McMahon himself acknowledging that Phillips had a peculiar interest in boys, and yet rehired him on the condition that he stay away from kids.
Ladies and gentlemen, anything can happen here in the WWF. Here's a first. Some pre-recorded editorial comments from Vince McMahon.
This is Vince McMahon of the World Wrestling Federation. I've always made it a point to refrain from personal commentary during WWF programming, but please permit me this one exception. As many of you know, several years ago, the World Wrestling Federation and I came under a vicious attack by the tabloid media, led by one Phil Mushnick of the New York Post. It's been the equivalent, in my view, of journalistic stalking. As we found out, these stalkers apparently are not interested in the truth, as they have been heard to say in the tabloid newsroom, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Mr. Mushnick attempted to give credibility to this type of tabloid investigation by telling his readers the feds don't waste money on witch hunts. Now, most people, myself included, naively believe that government prosecutors and their investigators are the good guys. Unfortunately, I found this to not always hold true. I was constantly amazed at the utter lack of ethics of some of the good guys involved in my case, all of whom had demonstrable ties to Mr. Phil Mushnick. I watched the good guys lie to the media, lie to the judge, lie to the jury. I watched the good guys get caught because they tried to pressure my alleged co-conspirator into changing his prior sworn testimony. I watched as the good guys were forced to admit that they had destroyed evidence. And I saw the ultimate impact of the truth when the jury acquitted me and the World Wrestling Federation without us even having to put on a defense or call even one witness. Although I had a great deal to say about this unique life experience at the time after the trial, I did not. However, recent events compel me now to speak. The day before Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving Eve, Mr. Mushnick in the New York Post wrote 2 new articles. One article was entitled, "Tampering Cloud Over Wrestling Big's Trial." It cites unnamed federal sources as suggesting that Marty Bergman, the husband of one of my attorneys, Laura Bavetti, tampered with witnesses, obstructed justice, and caused a baseless complaint to be filed against the good guys who were Phil Mushnick's cronies with the Justice Department. The article says that the good guys were exonerated, however, by the Justice Department, even though it's a known fact that one of the case agents is leaving the government, and the prosecutor, Sean O'Shea, is also rumored to be leaving public service.
Hulkamania is the largest arms in the world.
Hulk Hogan would not talk with CBS News, but the man who has made millions marketing Hogan has gone on the offensive.
Some of these allegations are absolutely absurd that have been raised.
McMahon insists it's all just a conspiracy to wreck his business.
And it just seems as though they're all ganging up on us all at one time.
These are people with axes to grind?
Yes.
They would like to see you fail.
No question.
Get him! Hit him in the ball! I'm in the
There's no sign the charges have done any harm. Although Hogan's star may be waning, one major manufacturer just ordered more wrestling toys. WrestleMania will be sold out. And even critics concede promoters are rich enough and fan mania is deep enough to ride out the storm.
This is not going to wreck professional wrestling.
Oh, no. Professional wrestling, no. Professional wrestling will be around forever.
In the main event, the Ultimate Warrior and Legion of Doom collide with The Undertaker and the Nasty Boys.
I was fired in mid-August of '91, after I refused actual advancement from Vince McMahon's buddy, the vice president of operations.
Pat Patterson.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What happened?
We were at an event at the Worcester Arena, and he had come up to me and he said, "So you're the new guy. What do you taste like?" And I was really put back by it. And I told him that he had the wrong guy. And then he told me candidly that not if I wanted to keep my job with him, I didn't. And he kept his word. 2 weeks later, I was fired.
Tom Cole was preparing to sue the WWF when, in a surprising twist, what the public didn't know at the time was that Cole had reached a secret agreement, a multi-year contract as a ring boy, 2 years back pay, roughly $70,000, a promise that he would not have to work near Garvin or Patterson again.
What do you make of all this, Bruno?
Well, first of all, it's Larry, it's ironic that people like Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, Mel Phillips have all resigned. They've all resigned from this organization, supposedly, because I question that too. But as far as McMahon being so shocked and surprised at all this, we go way back, for example, when one of his people, this Mel Phillips, was, when we were doing a taping in Allentown or Hamburg, we're in a parking lot. There have been people who come forward who caught him with an 11-year-old boy having in a car. And this fella's had a reputation for many years. And not only has he remained with the organization, even though this was brought to the attention of the McMahons, but this guy's flourished because he's been with the organization for a lot of years till now.
He was an executive with WWF?
Well, no, he was with, I guess they promoted him to a in charge of ring crew, plus he became an announcer, ring announcer.
I see.
Pat Patterson, of course, everybody in the industry knows he's gay, and that's his spot, it's his prerogative. I mean, as far as being gay, I have no problem with that. There's Terry Garvin. But these people, there's been talk for a long time, and it's no secret that McMahon is trying to say that he's shocked by this all.
Okay, Bruno, were you ever approached? Did you ever see it happen?
Of course not. I'm one of the old.
Not. It must have been flagrant then, Bruno. I mean, you were one of the top stars in the WWF. Surely you must have performed some of these sexual acts that they're being alleged to get to where you were. Is that right?
Sure. No, I was with the organization before any of these characters were even around.
You just said that Mel Phillips was there. You just said Pat Patterson and Terry Garvin were there. Wait a minute. Come on, Bruno.
I came in the 70s. I came in '59 with the WWF. Not in the late 70s.
Bruno, are you saying that you always heard these stories?
Absolutely. Not only I, but you will find out more and more, Larry, as these stories unveil. For example, there's McMahon, who is saying that this is all shocking, nobody's come forward. There's this young man here by the name of Tom Cole, who, for McMahon's lawyers, have been negotiating for the last 3-4 days, or maybe even longer, in trying to stop this fella from filing. But I guess the money that they're offering isn't enough.
Are you saying that someone's trying to file charges and they're trying to prevent them? I'll tell you what I'm saying. I'm saying, Bruno Sammartino, this incident that you alleged, did you see it? No. Did you actually see this incident in some sort of parking lot? Did you see that, Bruno?
Well, I was told about it right after it happened.
You were told about it. That's hearsay. Now, what about he just said that there's a wrestler currently now, or someone going to bring some charges that you're negotiating with. Is that true?
There's this gentleman by the name of Cole.
Is he a wrestler?
No. He was an occasional laborer that was used on occasion to help set up rings.
Right.
So we're
14-year-old
told.
boy.
I beg your pardon?
14-year-old boy when he first came to work for me.
Okay, now what are you discussing with his lawyers?
We're discussing charges that he is bringing. We went after this man Cole to find out. We're reading in the newspaper.
What did he say?
Well, first of all, we're trying to get to the bottom of this whole thing and find out names of any individual that may have been in any way harmed by anyone in the WWF.
Is Cole saying someone propositioned him?
Yes.
In return for what?
He apparently was seeking employment in the WWF.
And was told, if you have relations with me, you'll get hired.
Well, actually, yes, I believe so. And actually, he is alleging that there were even charges prior to that.
And now, does he threaten to go to the authorities?
No, he never went to the authorities.
Is Bruno right? Are you meeting with his lawyers to try to prevent him, to try to settle out of court?
In no way are we trying to settle anything out of any court. What we're trying to do, Larry, is get to the bottom of this. We want to know the truth.
For Cole, the choice was stark. Fight an empire with endless resources, or accept the deal. Mushnick called it what it looked like. A payoff to keep damaging testimony out of open court.
This very important conflict transpires at a time that the all-time star of the wrestling game, Hulk Hogan, felt obliged to go on the Arsenio Hall show to say, "I do not use steroids," only to be followed by a number of...
I don't believe you said that, Phil, if I can...
well, he said I used it, 3 times?
He did admit to steroid usage.
He said 3 times. And we have now several people stepping forward to say, listen, I sent Federal Express packages. They were picked up here and there. This is not to suggest that we know the absolute answer to this. This is rather to call your attention to the fact that now some inquiry extends to Hulk Hogan. Why is that important? Because he's on just about every kind of child's toy you can buy. We're talking Hasbro here. Some of the biggest giants in the manufacturing of toys are, and the images. He's not yet Mickey Mouse, but $1 billion worth of business. How much at risk is this?
In response to Mushnick's reporting, a federal grand jury was convened. Its original focus: allegations from numerous minors, including interstate transportation for illicit purposes. Investigators reviewed what appeared to be a smoking gun, a videotape showing Mel Phillips placing a boy's foot in his lap for an extended period, an act that mirrored multiple witness statements.
Earlier, I characterized the many letters and faxes sent by lawyers for the WWF as threats and bluster. In fairness to the WWF, though, you have to understand their concern. Allegations of teenage abuse certainly can't help business when so much of the audience is comprised of children. Ironically, although they did prevent us from running the Thomas Cole interview, the affidavit filed for that effect by Thomas Cole and his lawyers provides perhaps the best evidence of precisely the kind of abuse this young man experienced. I'll quote from it. The interviews contain graphic descriptions of sexual abuse I sustained between the ages of 13 and 19, most of it between the ages of 13 and 16. This abuse has left me emotionally scarred, end quote. There is also no doubt that this investigation has scarred the already controversial reputation of the WWF, and there is no lawyer on this planet that can stop me from saying that.
They're taking steroids. They're involved in child abuse. We've got allegations of animals being hurt here and killed. This is not family entertainment.
The WWF is just filth, lies, and cheaters. That's the way that company has been built on. They'll step on anybody's toes to get what they want.
McMahon is combination bulging bodybuilder and genius promoter. What he's done single-handedly is take professional wrestling out of smoke-filled rooms into family rooms, from Back Street to Main Street. But recent charges against him and his organization have threatened McMahon's empire. The most serious were raised by former ring boy Tom Cole. He says the top WWF executive harassed and abused ring boys, the teenagers hired to put up and take down rings at matches. The New York Post reported the allegations and broke the story nationally. Wrestling legend Bruno Sammartino confirms Cole's allegations.
The talk was on the inside that there were certain people within the organizations that were hiring these kids for one purpose and one purpose only. As far as wrestlers themselves, there was always been talk of some up-and-coming, good-looking young wrestlers who were put in situations that if they wanted to further their career, if they wanted to advance, if they wanted to climb that ladder, that they would have to cooperate. And if they did not, then their career would be nowhere.
The FBI identified at least 10 victims, but something unexpected happened. The investigation pivoted. Instead of focusing on child exploitation, prosecutors concentrated on steroid distribution, a charge far easier to prosecute and more visible to the public. The result? Vince McMahon stood trial in 1994, not for child endangerment, but for allegedly distributing steroids to wrestlers. He was acquitted. The Ring Boys' allegations quietly faded from headlines.
So many different issues here, and the as far as like a criminal thing, I think hopefully everybody in this panel wants just the truth to come out, and I don't know what the truth is. We all hear different versions of a story, and we just want to hear the truth. So that's fine.
John, what would you add to that? Same question.
Well, the mainstream media pretty much has ignored the entire situation. They really just started jumping on it last year with allegations of steroid abuse in the World Wrestling Federation, and now they've really come alive.
And what do you think? That's what opened the door to these charges?
I think what opened the door to all these charges basically was the fact that last year, after the steroid trial of Zaharian, Vince McMahon started a steroid policy.
Dr. Zaharian, Harrisburg, PA, 3 years steroid distribution.
Right.
Yeah.
And after that trial, Mr. McMahon started a steroid policy, and during that press conference, he did not invite the wrestling media. I alerted Phil Muchnick to that, and after that, that's when certain people started calling Mr. Muchnick about other allegations.
Merchandise like this Hulk Hogan doll and wrestling gear reportedly earned the World Wrestling Federation $1.7 billion in 1990. Add that to gate receipts for professional wrestling matches at some of the world's largest arenas, and you have a business that takes in more money annually than the NFL. What's disturbing about this scenario is that the WWF bills itself as family entertainment. Good, clean fun for the kids. But according to some former employees, the WWF is anything but wholesome.
Phillips was eventually dismissed. Garvin and Patterson resigned, though Patterson returned after one accuser recanted. Over time, lawsuits continued. In 1999, another Ring crew member alleged similar abuse, resulting in a confidential settlement.
You saw Ring Boys, did you, being
Yes, I've seen Ring Boys being harassed.
What's a Ring Boy?
Ring Boy is a person who's usually employed to put up and take down a ring, travel from one town to another. Age group possibly from 13 to 19 to 20, fluctuates anywhere in between.
And you saw what?
I saw on one occasion, I believe it was New Haven, Connecticut, Pat Patterson actually grabbed one of these children in the crotch while putting up the ring. I came to the arena a little bit early, walking by the ring to the locker room, and I saw Pat Patterson with his left arm on the kid's shoulder and his right hand in his crotch. I witnessed this for myself.
You also claim to have, you did not see the abuse of a 12-year-old boy in the car. You mentioned this on Larry King's program.
I wasn't on Larry King's program.
Weren't you? I'm sorry, Barry, I'm sorry. Sorry, you weren't. Bruno was. We'll get to Bruno in a moment. Did you see, you didn't see the abuse of a 12-year-old in a car by the ring announcer, did you?
I didn't see the actual abuse. I was there the night in Allentown, Pennsylvania, when Mel Phillips was caught in the front seat of a car with a child approximately 10 years old performing oral on this child of 10 years old, brought into the arena by a security guard, confronted to Mr. McMahon, Vince Sr. and Vince Jr., and they said we would handle it.
Vince Sr., your father? Is that right, Vince?
Yes, and first of all...
Is that true?
No, I don't know if it's true or not. I can tell you that no one ever came to my dad.
What was the year that is supposed to have taken place, Billy?
About 82 or 83, I can't remember, but the main part I want to be...
We can also make this point, Billy. These are pretty heavy bombs you're throwing.
These are very heavy bombs.
But we don't have any proof, and I don't think you're claiming to have seen the illegal act.
Okay, I may not have seen this particular illegal act, but it has gone on for so many years. Just as the selling of drugs by Dr. George Zahorian has gone on for for 15 years in the World Wrestling Federation, witnessed and condoned by Vince McMahon, you see, and condoned by him sitting this close to Dr. Zahorian while he sold steroids, while he sold barbiturates, downers and uppers to every wrestler who have wanted them. You see, I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is the man could condone this, so he also condoned the homosexuality. He put up with the drug selling, and he put up with the homosexuality.
Identify the cast of characters here. You mentioned Mel Phillips. He is another of the executives who has resigned.
I don't believe he was an actual executive. He was a ring announcer.
Was he not? Has he not resigned from the WWF?
I believe he has resigned or been fired. I don't know which.
Is he not one of the people who has...
He's one of those who has
stepped down
alleged, yes.
Following the publicity about this. Nobody's been proven guilty. We should get that point. You're denying you recall anything like this, looking the other way.
Not only that, the thing of it is, why not speak up? If I saw something like that, I'd call the authorities. That's what you would do.
Well,
a 10-year-old boy, you call the authorities. Come on. You're not going to let somebody like that get away with that. Please.
You know why? You know why? Why didn't you? Why didn't you
speak
up? Why didn't you speak up when you allowed?
And I'm very happy to confront everyone today with whatever allegation they have. The three individuals about whom most of these allegations are hurled are no longer with the WWF. We have started an independent investigation on our own to get to the bottom of all of this, and that's why we're here today, is to get to the bottom of it. We may even learn something here today that my investigators do not know. I want to get to the bottom of it just like you gentlemen do.
What would you like to say to him? Anybody?
I'd like to say that it's about time because up until now you've been animately denying that not only this is taking place, but that and you're saying that you knew nothing of it, and I just find that really difficult to believe.
Well, there's no reason. How do you find it difficult to believe that I knew nothing of it? Why would I condone this kind of activity and risk this alleged kind of revenue?
Because you are the king of an empire and you have eyes and ears everywhere, and it is so common, at least the topic of conversation for 3 to 5 minutes every night in the dressing room, because a lot of the guys, they have to put up with it and they hate it because if they say anything, they're out of a job.
I don't believe that to be the case, but there may be some of it. If that's the case, then let's get to the bottom of it. I'm anxious to learn, just as you are.
Well,
I want to hold some organization. I want an organization that everyone can be proud of. I want to get to the bottom of it, just like you do.
This happened to me. I tried to call. I called the WWF offices. You were always in a meeting. They took my number, said you'd return my call. But, you didn't want to talk to me, basically. I'm sure at the time you didn't know who I was, didn't know what I had to say. But, I tried to explain it to whoever I talked to and I called. And, they didn't want
this was when, sir?
1985.
I don't recall the telephone
Has
call.
there been any lawsuit?
Do you believe that sexual harassment exists in your workplace?
I believe that there's a possibility of harassment existing everywhere. And
I asked directly if it was in the World Wrestling Federation.
In my organization. I don't want it.
I'd like to reiterate the question. Do you believe there is harassment amongst the wrestlers or employees of the World Wrestling Federation today?
There is a possibility of that. That's why I have these independent investigators to come in.
And who are these independent investigators?
Fairfax Group Limited. And I would like, to hear what you have to say, and everyone has to say. I want to get to the bottom of it.
There were whispers and rumors still permeating the backstage throughout the early 2000s. But this and some of the other scandals rumbling beneath the ring were quickly overshadowed by the Chris Benoit incident in 2007. On Friday, June 22, 2007, Chris had missed a live event in Beaumont, Texas, claiming his wife had fallen ill. Over the course of that weekend, however, Chris had tragically ended the lives of his wife and child, and then himself.
Now comes word that 14 hours before the bodies were discovered, there was a posting on Wikipedia announcing the death of Nancy Benoit. Just more bizarre stuff in this awful case. With this how to analyze, Fox News anchor Geraldo Rivera. And every day, this gets more and more bizarre.
I think that there is going to be increased scrutiny of WWE and what role they played in, I don't know about the facts and circumstances surrounding the death necessarily, but certainly in the steroid abuse of the people who are their actors in this entertainment that we see. It obviously combines great athleticism, but there's also heavy steroid use. They know about the heavy steroid use. Today, there were raids on Benoit's doctor in the Atlanta area, raids on the internet pharmacy in Florida that also prescribed drugs to him and many others. So I think, and when you recall that WWE did everything it could in the immediate wake of this tragedy to downplay the
steroid
possibility that there was roid rage and say, oh no, it was because the couple had been feuding over the care of their developmentally disabled 7-year-old son, Daniel. What a bunch of bunk that was. They were trying intentionally to deflect the public's attention from this steroid use.
But authorities are still waiting for the toxicology report, but they did confirm that anabolic steroids were indeed found in the home. Law enforcement officials gave a lot of details at a news conference this afternoon right outside the Benoit home in suburban Atlanta.
As you know, yesterday afternoon, approximately around 2:30, the Sheriff's Department received a call for a welfare check here at the Benoit residence. That call came from Mr. Benoit's employers. Apparently, he had missed some engagements earlier this weekend out of state. They became concerned for his health and well-being. The deputies arrived on scene. Once searching the house, they were able to locate 3 bodies inside of the home here. Those bodies were Mr. Benoit himself, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel.
On June 25th, WWE aired a tribute show for Benoit, believing initially that he and his family had died in a home invasion or accident. Within 24 hours, when facts of the case emerged, WWE scrubbed Benoit from programming and future broadcasts to intentionally have Chris erased from history. The Benoit case did more than shock wrestling. It rewrote its cultural narrative. For years, when mainstream audiences thought of wrestling scandals, they thought not of abuse allegations, hush money, or systemic misconduct, but of one man's unspeakable crime. And by extension, the dangers of head trauma, drugs, and the industry's physical toll. It is a story of personal tragedy that became a corporate shield, intentionally or not, for older and newer scandals alike.
He's a star of WWE with athleticism and ability to spare, but at 40, Chris Benoit is dead. His body and the bodies of his wife and son were found in different rooms at the family home in Georgia.
One being in an office, that was the wife. Mr. Benoit was located in a weight room, and the minor child was located upstairs in a bedroom.
This is the crippler Chris Benoit, and we are only a few hours away from WrestleMania. If you want to hear more from me, stay tuned to Sky Sports News.
Benoit was a regular in Britain and on Sky Sports, but pulled out of the Vengeance pay-per-view event at the weekend, citing a family emergency, and began sending what friends call curious text messages. Forensic tests are continuing at the home, and post-mortems are being carried out, but police already have a theory.
Until we get the crime lab reports, it's undetermined exactly what happened.
He had famous friends and admirers outside the wrestling world.
Can you guess who the wrestler is and who the soccer player is?
Probably not. But it wasn't all glamour, and just a few months ago, he spoke about the constant demands of WWE.
We make so many sacrifices while we're on the road. I mean, to get to, a WrestleMania moment or to be able to perform in front of the crowd.
The former heavyweight and intercontinental champion began wrestling in his teens and joined WWE 8 years ago. His wife, Nancy, worked as a wrestler's agent and manager. A spokesman for WWE described Benoit's death as a terrible tragedy and an unbearable loss.
And I remember turning to King Kennedy and go, "Oh my God, Chris is dead." Because I just know, I saw Undertaker and Michelle coming, and I just knew Undertaker would have been given the heads up. And then when she was like so upset, it's like, oh my God, he's got to be dead. He's got to be dead. And then I remember they came out and proceeded to tell us not only had Chris been found dead, but his family had as well. And that they were going to change the whole show that night, and they're going to go a different direction and, remember Chris Benoit that night. So it was a super eerie day. And even having to walk around all day, seeing all that funeral stuff, it was such a weird, creepy day, man. Corpus Christi, Texas. I'll never forget it. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday and how shocking that news was.
Now, decades later, in 2024, 5 former ring boys came forward in a new lawsuit against WWE, including Vince and Linda McMahon and the parent company TKO Group Holdings. They allege systemic abuse from the 1970s through the early 1990s and a corporate culture that looked the other way.
New at 11, a bombshell new lawsuit for WWE and its founders. According to a suit filed in Baltimore County Circuit Court this week, longtime ringside announcer Mel Phillips targeted young men from disadvantaged backgrounds and hired them as ring boys to help with wrestling matches. The 5 plaintiffs accused Phillips of abusing them while in several states, including here in Maryland. Phillips died back in 2012 and therefore is not named as a defendant in the suit. Instead, the WWE's founder, Vince McMahon, and his ex-wife, Linda, are named. McMahon stepped down from WWE in 2022 after allegations of sexual misconduct.
What do you think about this ring boys stuff coming back all these years later? With
Again, it's back.
Apparently, they lifted the lawsuit statute of limitation in Maryland. So now there's like 5 of the families of the ring boys suing WWE now again for all that stuff that happened with the agents back.
That's crazy. I mean, because you got to go back. That was what, in
late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s. You got to go all the way back there for evidence. How's that going to work? But yeah, I know that's the first I heard of that. I know a couple guys are probably going to try to put in on it. It's like, let me in. I was a ring boy. Because you know, when you do that, you open the door for anybody that was around at the time. Yeah, so I'm not going to say.
How did that work, anyways? They just hired kids. Like, it seems so crazy.
They all were young. I mean, back then, in the 90s, early 90s. I guess they probably still are. You got to remember, there's a lot of work to be done when putting a ring up. You know, it's not like you can just snap your fingers and it's up. You know, there's a lot of manual labor put in. So it makes sense you'll get younger kids. But at the same time, you remember Mel Phillips or of him?
I remember Terry Funk, the angle he did with Terry Funk beating him up before a match that time.
Hear that? Oh no, wait a minute. Oh no. Oh, come on. Look what's happening. I can't. Harry, fuck. The ring attendant was simply, oh my goodness, was simply trying to take his things. Oh, this poor man.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mel, I liked Mel. Not like that, but I mean, I liked Mel. And, we were buddies. But it was unknown that he liked the young boys. Man, I'm probably getting myself in trouble here, but I don't want to be a witness. Let me see how I can sidetrack that one. It was said that Mel had fun with the little boys. And so Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, he used to be so funny. He'd come, hey, you know what? Because I guess Mel liked feet. Some people are into feet. I don't get that at all. So, but
me neither. I don't understand the attraction there, but yeah.
Yeah, with sweaty ass toxins come out of, but it was said around that Mel was a freak for feet and stuff. He'd always go around. Hey, you heard Mel's favorite food? What? Fritos. Yeah, Mel, I guess he was kind of, from what I know, was pointed out during that whole lawsuit thing. I'm not sure about that. I'm assuming because it was so much well known that there was a joke. Kurt's got that joke going around. It was kind of funny. Fritos.
Yeah, I guess there was all that because Pat Patterson retired for a while, then came back, and Mel left, was brought back and disappeared. Then there was Terry Garvin. What could you tell us about Terry Garvin? Because we rarely hear about him.
One of my favorite people. When I first started in the business, way the hell back in 1984, Kansas City territory. It was still one of the last territories around. Terry Garvin was the booker, and we had a thing, common grounds where we like to rib, pull pranks on, anybody, everybody. And Terry was big into that, so we kind of got that closeness right away. And thank goodness, because I love Terry to death, he never really advanced on me as far as that. And I would see him in the clubs. We'd go out when we were on the road for overnight or whatever. He would point out to me and Sean, like, that guy right there, see that kid over there, and it'd be some young boy, like, you had to just turn 21, and let's see what you can do for me. He was trying to get us to hook him up, like, well, man, are you comfortable with that? I'm used to hooking up my guys with girls and stuff like that, but not guy on guy. I don't know how to play that one. But he obviously was, like the boys, the younger boys. And again, like I said, I wasn't comfortable with it. Tried to stay on the outside of it.
It was very obviously an open secret. And when it comes to barely legal in Vegas, that's one thing. But with multiple sources claiming to have knowledge, Mel Phillips was interested in the much younger ring boys, and it going beyond what could have been dismissed as playful. But what we know was more likely a foot fetish, and the amount of people that stood idly by and made jokes about it, echoing the culture and atmosphere that protected people like Nickelodeon's Dan Schneider, who, like Mel Phillips, also happened to have a fascination with children's feet. These lawsuits were made possible by the Maryland Child Victims Act, which removed the statute of limitations for civil claims of childhood abuse. In early 2025, the Maryland Supreme Court upheld the law, ensuring these cases could proceed. 3 more plaintiffs joined soon after, with new allegations even implicating one well-known wrestler as an accomplice in a single incident. The case now moves forward, finally giving survivors a chance to be heard in open court 3 decades later. The Ring Boys scandal is not just a wrestling story. It's about power, access, and vulnerability. It's about how corporate image can overshadow individual safety, and how victims often have to wait decades for their day of reckoning. This story shows how institutions, when faced with allegations of misconduct, often focus not on prevention or accountability, but on public relations. For the wrestling industry, this case is a reminder no amount of spectacle can mask the truth forever. For Tom Cole, life was never the same. Despite speaking out, he carried the weight of his experiences for decades. In 2021, at the age of 50, he ended his life. A tragic coda to a story that had already left so many scars. He'd once said he came forward not for fame, but so that no other child would have to endure what he did. Whether or not this new wave of lawsuits will bring aid justice or accountability remains to be seen. One thing is clear. The voices of the Ring Boys are finally being heard, and the world is finally listening. Wrestling might feel like an isolated stage, but this script plays out in Hollywood, music, sports, politics, everywhere influence and money overshadow accountability. The bigger question isn't just what happened then. It's what's still happening now, and how many stories just like this are still being buried, waiting to be uncovered. If history has taught us anything, it's that the truth has a way of breaking through, and when it does, it changes everything. This isn't just about wrestling's past, it's about the systems we all live in today. And it's up to us to decide what we do with that knowledge.